As human beings, it's in our innate nature to give thought to what other people think about us. If you didn't carry your weight back in the day, or you did and said things away from the norm of the tribe, you were ousted and left to your own. Being on your own meant lower chances of survival and the associated anxiety that goes with that. You were much better off going with the crowd and fitting in and ensuring your highest chances of survival as a tribe rather than a lone wolf. Things look a lot different now. You get food at the click of a button. You have a social media connecting you to the world at your fingertips. You're really never alone anymore, although some would say it's the loneliest times they've ever experienced. But that's a separate topic. But point being, survival now looks a lot different than it did back then. You can survive, and we're talking very basic food and shelter here, without really relying too much on others. Cancel culture aside, there's really no tribe to be kicked out of for thinking differently or walking your own path. Yet we do still seek the validation of other people and experience the associated anxiety to secure that validation, and we feel poorly when we don't get it. We want to be seen as wealthy to other people on Instagram. We want our highlight reel to be the best one. We want others to see the brand of the car we drive that we really can't afford. We want others to see the body we've built rather than enjoying the process of being healthy. Bottom line, we want the validation of other people. That innate part of us still exists, but its function just looks much different and serves a different purpose than it used to. Now, some people would say, don't care what anyone thinks, I do my own thing, and something along those lines to signify how much they don't care about what anyone else thinks of them. Funny enough though, the people that are the loudest about this tend to care the most. It's a perverse pursuit of validation for how much they don't care about validation that's quite easy to see through. The way I see it, it's futile to try and overpower several years of evolutionary mechanisms. However, we do have developed prefrontal cortexes that allow for higher level thinking. Combined together, these evolutionary mechanisms of survival and our ability for complex thinking in the context of our current environment can be used to exponentially serve us rather than poorly trying to repress either of them. You're going to seek validation, that's not a choice. However, whose validation you seek and how you seek it is a choice. Keep in mind, validation isn't always a round of applause or an attaboy. Sometimes it's not even direct. Validation can be as simple as being in the same room as the people you respect. The allowance of your presence there is their validation of you. It can be a standing ovation as you stand on stage, but it can also be a congratulatory hug from a grandparent. The value of the type of validation depends on the person getting it and their goals. When I was younger, like most kids, I wanted the validation of my parents. I wanted them to feel pride in me. And my pursuit of this looked like doing really well in school, working hard for a lot of years, getting into med school and becoming a good physician. And that's great, mission accomplished, validation received, they were definitely proud. But then I started to realize that I'm more creative and entrepreneurial, and I had repressed that side of me to follow this path, and that validation could no longer serve me. My parents aren't entrepreneurs. To them, the only version of success that they've seen is doing well in school and following the safe path that comes from that. When they see me working on an entrepreneurial pursuit, they see it as a waste of time and a distraction from what I, quote, should be doing. If I were to seek their validation in this regard, it would mean quitting building anything I'm building, taking on more shifts at work, saving money, picket fence, and on and on. Seeking that validation would not serve me. When I was in med school, you rotate through different specialties in your third year. More or less, your job for 4 to 6 weeks is to earn the validation of the people you're working with so you can pass the rotation and move on to the next. Every specialty has its stereotypes, and although not always true, like most stereotypes, there is an element of truth to them. The surgeons respected the grind, 80-hour work weeks, not sleeping, filling up the board with surgical cases, the complexity of the surgeries, who could work the longest without a vacation. These were the ways to earn their validation. I did it to pass the rotation, but I didn't care for this to be my life. So in the micro sense, for 4 to 6 weeks, I did value their validation and did what I had to do. They liked me, I did well on the rotation, great. But it would have been a mistake for me to seek their validation on a macro scale and make that my life so I could fit into that group. There were other people whose validation was around how many research papers they could pump out in a year. This was nauseating to me, so I avoided working with this group of people to begin with. Back in high school, validation of the cool kids meant partying every weekend and who could get with the most girls. Back when I worked at a coffee shop, validation of management meant how clean the back area floor was and how well you could keep the stock in front filled. So you see, we're all looking for groups to be a part of, directly or indirectly. You become part of that group by embodying and doing what it takes to get the validation of that group. So as I looked around to the internet and saw all these young people building businesses and living life on their own terms, it seemed like a group of people as a collective whose validation I would want. And so my actions away from work reflected that. I started writing, recording videos, producing content, and figuring out what I could build that could provide value in the world and get me paid. Seeking the validation of these type of people led to much different actions than seeking the validation of my parents or those surgeons that I work with. This is the classic you become who you surround yourself with. If your friends are all fat and lazy, seeking the validation of that group looks like smoking weed, eating like trash, and playing video games. Now that might be a lot of fun, but the actions you put in to secure the validation of that group will have their associated consequences, which may not be so fun. Conversely, if your friends and the people you associate with are dedicated gym goers, eating to live rather than living to eat, their actions look vastly different. And if you want to continue being part of that tribe, the pursuit of their validation will cause you to take much different actions than the previous example. When you don't do the actions and live in the ways that earns the validation of the group, you and they will feel an inherent sense that you are different and you don't necessarily belong. Obviously, in most cases, this is going to be subconscious. But your job is to be very conscious in deciding whose validation you're going to seek. Because again, it's not your choice to seek it. It's only your choice whose validation you'll seek. If you don't decide, you're going to resort to seeking the validation in your surroundings, be it physical or the content you consume on the internet, just so you can feel a sense of belonging. That's why it's so important to surround yourself with people you want to be like, whether it's literally in your physical environment or curating what you consume over the internet. It would be extremely difficult for me to make any meaningful progress in my entrepreneurial ventures if all I'm surrounded by is negativity and discouragement in that realm. But if I only allow myself to consume the content of entrepreneurs on social media and surrounding myself with others in real life with similar values, if I hold entrepreneurs in a high regard and respect and choose to seek the validation of that group through my actions so I can be part of it, then it's only natural for me to take the associated actions and get that done. Again, this validation usually won't look like someone literally praising you or saying you're doing a good job. And chasing that validation is almost always not a conscious thing, it's just what you do at a subconscious level. That's why the whole point is to make it a conscious thing. It's more nuanced than someone directly praising you. You're going to feel a sense of belonging in the groups you seek this validation from because your actions and associated results line up with their MO. As time goes on and results become more obvious or bigger scale, then that validation can turn into praise and awards and status. So the point is this, whether you decide to or not, you're going to seek validation. Your job is to decide in every area of life whose validation would you like and what group would you like to be part of. Do you want to be with the victims whose validation comes from one-upping how hard their life is without doing anything about it? Or do you want to seek the validation of mentally tough individuals who have taken their pain and turned it into their purpose? Do you want to fit in with game-changing billion-dollar entrepreneurs? Or teachers that genuinely care about the kids they teach? The groups you want to be part of is your choice. And that choice is evident through the actions you take. But for your own good, make sure you're very deliberate about whose validation you're seeking. You might end up just like them, and that's not always such a good thing. Till next time.